opinion.
It's great to see so many people here. Let me ask you, how many people, if this hearing had not occurred, how many people here would have attended large?
How many people would have gone to Forest City to speak if this one wouldn't have been here? So we've had about a half a dozen.
Maybe 5, 6, 7. Which is really the point of my statement. My name is Friedman. I'm speaking on behalf of the Canary Coalition. The North Carolina Division of Air Quality is not doing its job. If it was doing its job, this hearing would have been scheduled by the state agency itself rather than by a coalition of community organizations. And what only can be seen as an effort to protect Duke Energy's Cliffside project from major public scrutiny, the taxpayer-funded North Carolina Division of Air Quality, with the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, has attempted to avoid holding public hearings in the major population centers of North Carolina, including the greater Charlotte metropolitan area, with its abundance of newspapers, TV and radio stations, and community networks. Of course, we're not going to allow the state agency to avoid the people of Charlotte and the rest of North Carolina, but the attempt is clearly avoidance on the part of DAQ. The DAQ is trying to avoid public scrutiny of the Cliffside process because their administrative officers understand that close examination by the news media will reveal an inappropriate relationship between a regulatory agency and the industry it is supposed to be regulating. DAQ has not been fulfilling its mission of working with the people of North Carolina to improve air quality, which is what it states on its webpage. Rather, it has been working with corporate utility industry executives to enable Duke Energy to circumvent the intent of the Federal Clean Air Act. The DAQ is trying to avoid public scrutiny because administrators understand the agency crossed a legal line when it approved a minor source of hazardous waste designation for Cliffside Unit 6 on the basis of a falsified test at the Marshall plant. Extremely expensive, low chlorine and mercury content coal was burned with the intent of dramatically lowering hazardous emissions from normal operational levels in order to skew the results of this test. DAQ officials were completely aware of the unrealistic conditions under which the test was conducted, but the agency allowed Duke Energy to proceed and used the results as qualifying data to determine that the new Cliffside Unit 6 will be a minor source of hazardous pollutants and not subject to a strict emission control requirements under the Clean Air Act. If Cliffside is ever completed and begins operation, this will result in more mercury, lead, cadmium, arsenic, dioxins, hydrogen chlorides, and dozens of other hazardous pollutants being spewed into our air. The DAQ is trying to avoid public scrutiny because the agency understands that new federal carbon dioxide regulation requirements have been inappropriately ignored during the Cliffside permitting process. Duke Energy made every effort to slip in under the wire to be grandfathered in, even though the desperate need for CO2 regulation has been firmly established on the federal level. But the DAQ hasn't responded by safeguarding the public interest and regulating carbon emissions in North Carolina, as now mandated by the Environmental Protection Agency. Rather, it has responded by aiding and abetting Duke Energy's effort of avoidance every step of the way in order to build a new power plant that will pump into the atmosphere an additional 6 million tons of greenhouse gases each year for the next 50 years. The DAQ, with the collaboration of the North Carolina Utilities Commission, has aided Duke Energy in this endeavor, despite the fact that Cliffside's energy capacity is not needed to meet North Carolina's ratepayers' electrical demands into the foreseeable future. Cliffside is being constructed purely to allow Duke Energy to expand its customer base outside of North Carolina and to increase its electricity sales and profits. In fact, last year, Duke expanded by signing a contract with 5 electricity co-ops in South Carolina to supply 1,000 megawatts of capacity, which is more capacity than the 800 megawatt Cliffside climate change machine will provide. The DAQ is trying to avoid public scrutiny because the industry would like to hide the fact that emission controls removing air pollutants like sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide, mercury, lead, arsenic, cadmium, barium, hydrogen chlorides, hydrogen fluorides, and dioxins really only move and concentrate the toxins into dangerous, enormous ash piles that are almost certain to contaminate nearby waterways sooner or later when dams and safeguards fail, as in Kingston, Tennessee, Widows Creek, Alabama, and Loop, Maryland, just in the past 2 years. The DAQ is trying to avoid public scrutiny because the industry, the agency, and other subservient government officials know that public awareness of climate change is growing and that opposition to more coal burning is growing. The demand is emerging for the rapid phase-out of all coal-burning power plants in North Carolina and everywhere. But the industry doesn't want it to be part of the public record that most people oppose the construction of the new coal-burning power plant at Cliffside. That's why the DAQ decided to hold the agency's only official public hearing in Forest City, where a disproportionate percentage of the population is employed by Duke Energy and all local elected officials are in their pocket. If the DAQ was really doing its job, we wouldn't even have to be here tonight, because the air quality construction permit for Cliffside would have been denied from the outset. This is the year 2010, and there are 390 parts per million of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. This is no time to build a new coal-burning power plant.
Deputy Robinson, followed by Ben.